And welcome in to the Four Verticals Podcast, episode 179, here on this May 7th, 2026, high atop a warm Jacksonville, Florida, hit 90, I believe 90 degrees, actually, as we're, right now, let me check, 93 degrees here, yeah. First actual 90-degree day here in Jacksonville, I believe, so how about that? It's, talking about, Mother Nature's furnace, if you will, here in Jacksonville. But that's this time of the year here around this part of the United States. So yeah, high atop a warm, hot Jacksonville, Florida. Got a lot to cover here, guys. Like I said on X a little while ago, this is going to be a very, very heated show. A lot of things to discuss. We have record projection, UNC up. Wasn't scheduled to do UNC and Florida State back-to-back, but just so happened to be the schedule lined up. We have thoughts on college football scheduling chaos. Don't worry, we'll get into that. That sort of transpired today, this morning. And we also had some thoughts on college football expansion. As well, sort of ties into the whole college football scheduling thing, but we'll talk about that later in the show. Of course, we'll have some thoughts on Josh Pate and RG3. Now, we did have another topic on here, but I decided to take that out. We'll eventually do it on Extra Pod. Probably is actually a question we had, so we'll just do it tomorrow on the Extra Pod. Which, by the way, the Extra Pods, yeah. So, a couple of housekeeping things here, and we'll get on to the actual show. Of course, we did not do a show Tuesday. Apologies for that. Again, scheduling issue, unforeseen scheduling issue is what it is. We'll just have to adapt with it. Of course, I'll be going on vacation in a few weeks. That'll be the week after, or the week of Memorial Day, so the week of the 25th. So I will not be doing the show that week. I will have pre-recorded shows, but there won't be any live shows during that time period. And then we'll be back to normal, hopefully, by the following week or the week after. So again, I know the schedule's been really weird lately. We haven't had a typical full week and consecutive weeks in a long time. It's just what it is. I can't really fix that for you guys. The scheduling issues just didn't work on Tuesday. Unforeseen, unfortunately, but is what it is. Extra Pods, we'll do one tomorrow. Again, we had a topic on the show today. We're going to cover that tomorrow on the Extra Pods. So be sure to subscribe to Spotify on the Extra to get the Extra Pods. It's only on Spotify. You can't get it on the freaking YouTube channel. You can't get it on X or whatever. It's only on Spotify. So be sure to head over there and subscribe. If you're over there listening to Spotify or if you're listening to Spotify to get the show. And of course, if you're on YouTube, I'd also suggest you subscribe over there to Spotify. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure to do that as well. Doesn't do anything. It doesn't, nothing happens to you. I don't come to your place of residence and force you guys to sign up for a form or anything like that. It just helps us out. It helps you guys out too, to keep you guys aware of when we do go live. Of course, we are live usually twice a week. Given our schedule, I wanted to do a show on Tuesday. I really did want to. I had a good idea for a show, but again, the scheduling issues it would not allow it to happen. But it kind of is what it is. So we typically do a show twice a week, giving scheduling issues, and we do an Extra Pod either on Wednesdays or on Fridays. We'll do one this Friday. Of course, you can follow us on X as well. We've been pretty active on there. We don't have any shows. And I think that's it for housekeeping. Again, we'll be on vacation later this month, so no live shows. We'll try to get some recorded ones. We're going to do a couple of them next week. Maybe something tomorrow or whatever. But the schedule will allow us. But certainly within the next few weeks, we'll have some pre-recorded shows, and we'll just make them basically make those evergreen shows. And then we'll get on with hopefully with more relaxed pattern of not having to deal with any issues until 4th of July week. So hopefully things will calm back down again, but it is what it is. Okay, so let's actually get in here. Guess pull up my show on the show on my phone here real quick and make sure the graphics are working, because we'll be using graphics again. New thing we're starting here. By the way, hopefully you guys do like the new thumbnails too. I know, yes, it's AI, but we have to use the tools we're given. So, anyway, if you guys have been living under a rock today, college football, the college football world was in a bit of a chaos earlier today. A lot of things were happening in terms of scheduling. As we pull up the graphic here, find which one I want to bring up here. Okay, it is this one. So what I'm about to bring up here is, of course, if you haven't learned, Florida State and Georgia are supposed to have a home and away series that was supposed to take place, a home and home series that was supposed to happen. And unfortunately, they had to cancel it for whatever reason. They did decide to cancel. Here's the graphic here. I think let's move it. Hey, that you guys can see it there. There's the official post there from Florida State saying, quote, Florida State and Georgia have mutually agreed to cancel their upcoming home and home series. Schools are working actively to schedule a neutral site matchup. And of course, you can see me on the bottom there commenting, saying keep college football games on campus. So this is not the only announcement that happened today. We also had, I believe it was a freaking Syracuse and Wake Forest next year. Seem to doing a game in Toronto for some reason, like because that's the way we do things now. Of course, we also have the international games of TCU, UNC, which we'll talk about later. TCU, UNC, at least at the moment, it'll be overseas, barring this energy crisis we're going through. They're overseas along with, I believe, like Virginia and NC State or something like that. So this whole issue of keeping games on college campuses, right, is something that I have been a big advocate for. Okay, like I am not a fan of any of these, having these games and these NFL venues or soccer venues or any of these freaking games taking place all the way in Ireland. None of that has never made any sense to me. Now, for the NFL, well, I may hate it as a fan of the Buccaneers. It kind of makes sense because it is the National Football League, and it's only in the and they are wanting to expand. And football has become a big sport, particularly with the NFL. That makes sense. It's a big sport, but for college football, it has never made any attempt because it's been more or less a United States thing, right? Like, I guarantee you go ask anyone who lives in, I don't know, like Azerbaijan, for example, or I don't know, Iraq or the UAE, not to bring up the Middle East, but I don't know, like go to, I don't know, Africa, for example, or South America, or go to Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea. I guarantee you most of those people are aware of football. American football, not soccer, but we call, of course, they call football over there internationally. But anyway, they understand what the NFL is. I guarantee you most of those folks in those countries I just mentioned do not know a single thing about college football. You ask them, I don't know, anyone from like Germany, Azerbaijan, UAE, and go, hey, you know what college football is? They probably go, college football, what's college football? I may have to do some translating as per usual. But yeah, after you do your translations, you realize, oh, they don't know what college football is. That shouldn't shock you. College football is not an international sport. They are trying to make something that is not what it is, or at least they're trying to make college football into something that is not, which is going international. That's a whole other issue, other than the whole neutral site, moving games away from campuses. But that is sort of a part of it, because again, you're taking away a home game from the home team that is now going to be played somewhere overseas or in an NFL venue. And that's what's going to happen to this Georgia-Florida State series. It's no longer happening home and home, and it's going to be a neutral site game. I think there's rumors it will probably be in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Go figure. So, and look, this is not the first time we've seen this happen. This has been happening over the years, but the thing is, though, with the rise of like X, Twitter, and social media, and now with this podcast sphere and on YouTube now, like people like me and some others, I think a lot more folks are becoming more and more angry about this because we have more ways to get our voice out there, unlike we were able to back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? So that's sort of why you're starting to see this pop up now. And you're starting to get folks like me, like on the screen here on this tweet, start to get very, very angry about this because, again, we want games to stay on college campuses. And the reason why I want that to happen is for a number of reasons, right? The importance of these games staying on campuses. I don't care if people will get mad at me for, saying, oh, you're just a hater of expanding the sport. There's ways to expand the sport that doesn't have to involve getting rid of home and home series and moving games to freaking like UAE and Ireland. Okay. So the things that make home games important is number one, obviously home field advantage. You get to have the advantage as the home team to have home field advantage, right? You have the home crowd there. You have, in some cases, 100,000 to 90,000 fans there screaming against this one team. And it does create that extra dynamic. It's an external force that these away teams cannot control. The second thing, this is probably the biggest one, helps the local community. Like, for example, this Florida State game. Like, yes, I know Florida State has sucked for the past 5 years or so. Well, not really 5 years, but within the last 5 years, they have sucked more often than not, okay? That's pretty obvious. But even when they have sucked, and yes, this year the ticket sales are low, and, Bud over on Cover 3 has brought up that, yes, the anticipation for this year's Florida State season is very, very low, and understandably so. I mean, heck, we just did their record projection last week. But even teams like Florida State, programs like that, the local community gets helped out a lot. Like, go back to last year's Bama game in Florida State. Like, even Cover 3, speaking of Bud, those guys, like when they were doing their show from, I forget the bar they were at, but they were there and all the fans were there. Like, that's what helps these local communities, right? It's the local bars and the restaurants and the local mom and pop sports shops. It's the area hotels. It's all of these people come into town for the Bama game last year for Florida State. It may have been, along with the Miami game last year too, but just it's helping out the local community and getting all these folks, whether it's the hometown team folks, the Florida State folks, if you want to use them for example, or the away team folks, whether it's Bama, Miami, Clemson. Like, there is a reason why a lot of these local community businesses, these small businesses, want these games to stay on campus. Because once they leave and go to, whether it's going neutral site, whether it's down the road here in Jacksonville, or whether it's in Atlanta or New Orleans or Orlando, or heck, all the way in the UAE, or halfway to China or whatever. When these games get moved to off campus, that's just taking away another day, another weekend out of those places making income. Okay, like, that's what happens with a lot of these games moving to a neutral site, moving to out of the country. That's what you're doing. Now, yes, you can turn it around and say, well, technically you're also helping these local economies in Atlanta, Georgia, or Dubai and the UAE, or Ireland or the UK and whatnot. And that is true, but here's the thing: those places that I just mentioned, and the others I mentioned as well, those are economies that in normal circumstances are going to be just fine. Like, if there's a college football game in the UAE or Ireland, or like Belfast, Ireland, or London, England, or Munich, Germany, like, they're fine. They're not going to actually crumble. Like, they have soccer and like other tourism. Like, they're going to be fine. These other places like Tallahassee, Florida, Auburn, Alabama, State College, Pennsylvania. These are not tourist attractions. These are not like places that have tall buildings and amusement parks and whatnot. Their economies, the more and more we start to see these games be taken away, they're going to hurt. Now, it's not going to be a big story or not, but it's true. They're going to hurt. And that is why people like me, Josh Pate, and others do not want this to happen. We absolutely do not want this to happen. And the reason why this is being driven is the same way you're going to talk about later with this college football expansion. Right now, just as we hopped on today, it was officially announced that the NCAA tournament is now expanding even more now. It's now confirmed. They're all doing this. Why this is happening? Because college football is ATM. And all these oligarchs, I mentioned this last week, now let's say it again, all these oligarchs and these TV Mongols and these TV executives, they have never ever done a focus group with fans or coaches or players. They've never done that. I guarantee you they've never done that. If they did, send me the evidence. Maybe I'll change my mind. But at the moment, based on these decisions and decisions like this, it's just adding more evidence to the fact that they are tone deaf to the fans and people who actually care about college football. They are tone deaf. They do not care about you. They do not give a damn about you. They give zero fucks about the fans, what the players want, what the coaches want. Then we'll talk about a little story later about the supposed American Football Coaches Society. That to me is just noise. That's not really real. Okay, like, it is very true, especially from the fan perspective. They don't care. Like, same thing with the NCAA tournament expanding. Again, they just do not care. To them, as what Josh Pate has said before, it's a fucking ATM. As long as that thing keeps on printing out money and they get those little green pieces of paper, that's all fine with them. They don't care. Be like, they're just sitting back and like, I don't know, bro. Why are you so upset, bro? Like, what are you all mad for, bro? That is how they feel. Okay. So, as I just mentioned, the importance of campus games, home field advantage, helps the local communities, which I think is the biggest one. Especially these colleges are not in, these smaller college towns. Now, the other one is how these home campus games deliver a unique experience. Going to a home game, whether it's in Auburn, Alabama, State College, Pennsylvania, Eugene, Oregon, Seattle, Washington for Washington games, Knoxville, Tennessee for Tennessee games, Memphis, Tennessee for Memphis games, Ole Miss over there in Oxford. These little towns offer unique experiences that no one can ever imagine. Trust me, I've been to some of these places, not for actual like college games, but even for even college basketball games. I was just at one in Auburn back in December. Like these places, like it's just a different feel, it's a different vibe. It's not necessarily the same vibe you get to like going to a Jags game, for example, or going to a Bucks game. Yes, there are some quirks there. Look, as a Bucks fan, I think our home field advantage and home field atmosphere is pretty good for an NFL team, right? It's it's not totally corporatized like some of these places, like the Falcons, for example, from what I've heard, or the Panthers, for example. No offense to those fans, but yeah, there's some places in the NFL that have sort of these like cultural things on their fans, but in college sports, particularly in football, it's a lot different, right? You have all these little quirks and all these little things that you don't see in the NFL. You don't see in the NBA. You don't necessarily see that type of stuff. And the only thing that's similar to that is, ironically, soccer, right? International football. That's the only thing that's closest to college football, in my opinion, or even college sports in general, right? Basketball, baseball, and nothing comes close to it, okay? Which is why I emphasize, and I'm screaming at the top of my lungs here, or not literally, but figuratively on Twitter, keep college games on college campus. For the love of God, please stop doing this, okay? Like, I cannot stress enough how idiotic this is. And again, I'm not faulting Florida State here. I know exactly why this is happening. Again, it's the TV execs. It's the oligarchs, right? The folks who own these big billion-dollar stadiums, right? They go, to keep this ATM money keep printing, to keep the machine printing money, why don't we just put this in a sterile environment in, Jacksonville, Florida, Orlando, Florida, and whatnot. We'll just make more money. We'll be reaping the rewards while these other folks, fans, have to actually travel somewhere, and these students have to travel somewhere. And a lot of these students, by the way, and I'm one of them being a college grad, we don't have a lot of money. Half these folks aren't even, they don't have like over $10,000 in their bank account. Do you really expect them to purchase, especially now with this energy crisis, to go purchase a $200 ticket to go fly all the way from Tallahassee, Florida, to go to some random neutral site field, whether it's in Nashville, Tennessee, or freaking Atlanta, Georgia, or New York City, or whatever? Again, for most like middle class families, yeah, sure, it's no problem. But for these college students, like some of these who are not, or like post or are like after graduation, like you're really expecting them to purchase, in some cases, $1,000 to go see these teams play overseas? No. Well, that is not. This literally has to stop. This literally cannot be. This cannot be sustainable at all. Again, I'm not faulting Florida State or Georgia. I'm sure that they, in their good minds, wanted to continue this series, be home and home. But again, unfortunately, because of some of these people, some of these oligarchs, and you know who they are if you do your research, they have a tendency to have this mindset of, move these teams to neutral site, get more money, get more incentives, and it's good for us, but the fans have to suffer because now they have to travel even more. They have to pay more money. So, and I guess a little bit more of a way to end this segment, and we'll move on, is that some good news is that Ohio State and Bama are keeping their series. So at least there are some programs out there that are actually understanding the idea of, what? There is kind of a reason to keep these games on campus instead of moving these to, lifeless venues, NFL venues that are not equipped for college football. So at least some programs in college football are actually still abiding by this rule. But unfortunately, man, and I'll just end up with this epidemic, if you will, of axing off major non-conference games, moving them to neutral site places. It's going to continue happening. It's not slowing down. And really and truly, it's not been slowing down for years. This thing really started back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and it's not been slowing down anytime soon. Now you have folks too who are saying, "Oh, maybe we should have the game in Hawaii or something like that, or halfway in Australia." It's like, no. But again, these oligarchs, TV executives, TV mongols, they don't care. Again, like I said before, these people have no idea how fans, players, or even coaches really think. They don't care. They don't care about you. All they care about is the ATM working, and that's all just fine and dandy. Okay. Like I said, I did not want this to be a depressing segment, but it kind of did turn into that. But anyway, and unfortunately, this depressingness does not stop. We have two more segments, two more topics that are going to be also very fiery, and one of them being unfortunately related to what we just talked about. So if you're new here, welcome into the show. Again, this is not our typical tone. We don't usually go like last week's show. Does not don't typically have this tone of voice or even this style of getting mad and whatnot. But unfortunately, this time of the year is where our emotions start to come out about the sport we love, and we are trying to keep the sport together and whatnot. But unfortunately, the TV executives, Mongols, oligarchs are preventing that from happening. But what are we going to do? Anyway, again, if you are new here, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you click the like button. Not required, but make sure you do that if you want to. Subscribe. Don't need to put the notification bell on. I don't personally for things I listen to. And be sure to follow us on Twitter and on the podcast feed. Again, we are doing our extra pod tomorrow, so be sure to keep an eye on the podcast feed and be sure to watch over there. Let me see here and check something on here on the YouTube side of things real quick. Okay, quality stream still going pretty well. Okay. Seems like we're doing pretty okay, all things considered. At least on the YouTube side of things. Again, we are using graphics for the first time ever, so it is kind of a new thing here. We're still getting used to, but I think it's going pretty well, I think. I will give myself a pat on the back here that I think these new graphics here are going pretty well. Pretty smoothly, I'll say. All right, moving right along. Get our next graphic up here. I think it is up here. Let me get a little check if it's even in my inventory. I think it is. Yeah, I think it is in here. Okay. Team record projection series continues. We did Florida State last week. That went swimmingly well, all things considered. But next up is UNC. Bill Belichick. Talked a lot about him last year, at the beginning of the year. And, of course, last year it ended up being a total disaster, as it turned out, even though their schedule was fairly easy and their roster was terrible. As we've talked about, of course, he's on the hot seat. They've done all these changes with, bringing in a better roster, I would say. Quarterback situation, probably a little bit better. Roster overall, a little bit better. Coaching staff is a little bit better. Bob Petrino, yes, the same Bob Petrino who was once the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons and the Arkansas Razorbacks and the Louisville Cardinals, is now the offensive coordinator with Bill Belichick. So all that stuff being said, you've actually upgraded your team, both using the transfer portal and the coaching staff. However, as you're about to see, their schedule is not what it was last year. It is actually way more difficult than it was last year. Unfortunately, again, cannot stress enough how easier last year's. Well, I wouldn't say easier, but how more manageable last year's schedule was. This year's schedule is a little bit more difficult, as you can see. So, as you can see, the schedule here, they get TCU and Durbin Island, of all places, shamefully taking away a home game from Texas Christian. So yeah, they get that week 0. Then they get an FCS team at Clemson, Notre Dame, non-con, but still, you still have to play them. So you get them, Pitt, Duke, them and Pitt on the road. Duke and Pitt on the road. Syracuse at home, Miami at UConn. Interesting there. Not for basketball, by the way. It's football. Then you get Louisville at home, and then in Virginia and NC State. And so as you can tell, that is not the same schedule they had last year, because last year they were playing more or less a manageable, workable schedule. This year, though, not so much. And again, it's ironic that they did all this work in both getting a better coaching staff and also kind of getting a better roster as well. So it is kind of sort of hilarious that they did all this stuff better in the in the portal and coaching staff hiring, but their schedule from last year is not this year's schedule. This year's schedule is a lot harder. So because of that, because of my skepticism of Bill Belichick, and look, I've said this before and I'll say it again. It was interesting last year that Belichick did not get fired. I was shocked by that. I think a lot of people were very surprised by that. I don't know if he will survive this season. I just don't think so. I mean, just based on how toxic things have been over there, whether it's the off-the-field stuff or on-the-field product, it's been really toxic. And, in the next few weeks on my vacation I keep on referring to, I will be visiting someone who has ties to the UNC program. Well, not literally ties to it, but someone who's a fan of it. I will get their thoughts on it while we're up there visiting, going to Charlotte, North Carolina to visit this person, and I will be asking them what their thoughts on of the program, and I'll report back what they say. I guess I'll probably do a follow up on this. But anyway, what I was trying to say, so I will be doing a follow up to this whole segment here about my thoughts on North Carolina. From what I can see from the outside looking in, it just doesn't seem It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of energy with them. And there was a lot last year because it's the new shiny object. It's Bill Belichick, and he's going to bring so much of this NFL. It's the 33rd NFL team and all that. And then you saw what happened last year, the TCU game. It was so bad that Herbstricht's dog, Peter, was literally on the announcing desk with a headset on. You can hear the dog breathing and making weird noises and whatnot. So that's how bad last year's TCU game was. And now that result was so bad they had to move it to a neutral site game. So actually, I'm going to check FanDuel. I guess we'll do that right now. We'll do that once the game gets closer. But I imagine UNC is probably going to be an underdog in most of these games. Definitely going to be heavy ones again. Heavy ones, certainly against TCU, Clemson, Notre Dame, probably Miami for sure. Louisville, same. Virginia, ditto. So now we get into our projection for them. What's their best case, worst case, most reasonable, record outcomes, right? Of course, the last we did Florida State. This one, I will say, is definitely going to be a lot worse than even Florida State's. And I was very down on Florida State's last week, but I think this one's going to be a lot more obvious how bad it's going to be. Again, this is even with the fact that their roster and their coaching staff, again, I cannot emphasize how much better it actually is this time around and how much they have really fumbled back, as you can get the graphic up here real quick. For some reason, it's not wanting to work. Okay. It's not working for some reason. That's okay. Try that again. And apologies for this. Usually... it's not uploading the image. Let me try this real quick here. Again, stand by. We are live on YouTube, by the way. If you're on Spotify, this won't matter to you necessarily. Let me see what the problem is. Let me see here. Because I don't think this should be happening, but again, full apologies here. I guess while we're at it here, interesting. Let me see if I can try this real quick. Stand by as I mute myself real quick. Or actually, no, we won't have to mute it. And apologies, guys. I did not think this would be an issue. Let me try and figure this out. Again, stand by here. I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do this, kind of what we did a few weeks ago. And I'm going to have to go on my big computer here and go on Restream and I guess force this image to be put on here. I'll have to hear myself echoing, but that's okay, I guess. It'll be a temporary issue. So, yeah, if you see the stream acting a little bit weird on YouTube, then is what it is. Okay. Hey guys, apologies. I did not intend this on happening, but it is what it is. Okay, let's see if this will actually work now. And apologies. Here we go. All right, now it's deciding to work. I'm not sure what happened here, but okay. Let me see if we can move this over to here. Okay, now it's working out. All right, good. So, best case scenario for UNC based on their schedule, everything we just talked about with the schedule. Again, it's way harder than it was last year, even though I think their team's improved. Best case scenario for me is 6-6, and again, that's only because, at least to me, again, their team on paper seems a lot better. They have Trino, who even last year at Arkansas, and even at Texas A&M under Jimbo Fisher in his final year there, the offense there was not necessarily the problem. And actually, it did get a little bit better. But best case scenario to me is 6-6. That's only because of teams like Clemson's a little bit worse than we think. Maybe Miami takes a step down. Well, actually, I'm just kidding. They're not. Maybe TCU's a little bit better, even though they just lost their quarterback to Indiana. And also, you have to also account the quick factor, right? Will this team, if they start out potentially 1-3, potentially 1-3, heading to that pick game, are they going to put watches or interim coach by then? We don't know for sure. So that is what the best case scenario is. Only 6-6. Worst case, 2-10. But there's only, if you really look at this game, there's only 2 games on here that I think they're going to be reasonably favored in, which is their FCS team and their game against Connecticut. On the road, by the way. So 2-10, worst case scenario. Most reasonable scenario for their record projection is 4-8. So 2 out of these 3 projections here are losing seasons from them. And if those 2 validate worst case, most reasonable, then I do believe Belichick will obviously be fired and there'll be regime change there. Again, this is not me hating on Bill Belichick. I don't hate him as a coach. Yes, he's a legendary head coach and whatnot in the NFL for a good reason, right? He has earned that. My problem was last year with him coming into college, contrary to many others' popular beliefs, this guy had zero college experience at all, nor did most of these people on his staff have college experience. Now, it turns out, again, bring in someone like Trino, who does have college experience, that helps out greatly, right? But unfortunately, again, their schedule is so difficult that even with all these changes they've made and all the adjustments they have made, I just don't really see a path forward to where they're really going to have any success. Again, 6-6 sounds good, and that's not impossible to see here. Again, if Clemson is a little bit worse than we think, if TCU is a little bit worse than what we think, if maybe this roster and this staff that they put together can just overcome a tough schedule, unlikely, but not zero. But like I mentioned last year, again, just the fact that you're bringing in this coaching staff, along with the head coach, but again, zero college experience basically, don't know exactly what they're doing and how to handle a college schedule. And again, not to mention, too, the off-the-field issues with Bill in his personal life. It's like all of this stuff has culminated to where we are right now, where there's a zero energy whatsoever. And I'll just say, too, and look, we don't talk college basketball here, but this whole situation with the hiring of Belichick in general has really, truly highlighted a bigger issue with North Carolina athletics, right? We all know the story of certain folks connected to UNC, the boosters, wanted Bill Belichick to be the coach, while Bubba Cunningham, the AD, did not want him. Well, as it turns out, that's not the only time they've done this. It just happened recently with college basketball. They hired a former NBA coach to be their basketball coach. Had zero college experience, too, very similar to Belichick. So, as it turns out, this hiring and the college basketball hiring have once again highlighted, or at least have emphasized, that there is a pretty significant disconnection within the North Carolina program and a systemic issue there. So, if and when I think Mr. Belichick is let go and there is regime change there, I do wonder, will Bubba Cunningham actually say no to the UNC, I guess, mafia, if you want to call them that, the oligarchs there at Chapel Hill? Will he actually say, no, we're not doing this, and we're going to hire someone who has college experience, if and when Belichick, I believe, he gets fired? Usually, I don't advocate for guys who get fired. And look, I hope this does work out. Maybe Nick Saban was right last year. Maybe he's got to get this guy over a year to get his feet wet and understand the college atmosphere. Maybe they'll go 10-2 and make a run to the ACC championship game. Highly unlikely, but if and when he does get fired, the real question then it's going to be, okay, who is actually running the search? Is it the oligarchs and the money people at UNC, or is it actually going to be the athletic director in conjunction with them and him putting them in their place to actually hire an actual coach who does have college experience versus some NFL guy? But who knows? Maybe they fire Belichick and they hire Bobby Petrino as their head coach. Maybe that's the route. Maybe that is the route UNC needs to go to fix their football program. But who knows? Get some water real quick and we'll move on to our final segment, which ties into our first one. So, tie things back to the beginning of the show. Again, as I said a little bit ago, and at the beginning of the show, subscribe. YouTube channel, not Instagram, follow over there. X, but also podcast feed. Again, we'll be doing our extra pod tomorrow. I'll get that recorded and shipped out for you guys for the weekend. Let me see if I can bring up this image ready to go for our final segment here. I think there's 2 images we're bringing up, or just one. Yeah, it's only 2. So, as most of you have probably seen the news going around about college football expansion, right? We've seen it. Of course, I mentioned earlier, the NCAA tournament is expanding. There's been talks about college football expansion. And it just so happens that a couple of days ago, according to folks like Ross Dellinger, people like that, as you bring up this new image here, that there's been a lot of expansion news and a lot of chaos in the last 24 hours. And this first item we're about to bring up, or I was going to bring up, I guess we're not going to now for some reason. Not sure what's going on here with the graphics. Try that again. Or maybe we do this. Actually, can I do that? Again, apologies, guys. I thought these graphics would be working a lot better. I guess they're not. Maybe we. Not sure what happened to the camera here. For some reason, it's not. There it is. It just popped up. Let me see here. Again, for some reason, we're not able to get those images up for some reason, which is very odd. Again, apologies for the screen going black. I'm not sure what happened there. 1 second, guys. Again, apologies here. I'm not sure what's happening here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do this. And unfortunately, we'll just have to do it this way, it looks like. But it's okay. Again, hopefully we get this image thing figured out. I'm not sure what happened there. So again, it looks like we're going to have to go on here and do this more difficult way, having to go on my computer here and log in and upload these images, it looks like. So apologies for that. Again, as we're here, again, Spotify folks, apologies, but restream being weird as usual for some reason. I'm not sure why, but so I guess, yeah, we'll just have to do it this way, I guess. Let's see, which one are we going to bring up first? Image, or which image we're going to bring up first? Again, apologies for what happened on here. Hopefully you guys can still see me and whatnot. It looks like you guys can on YouTube. Again, apologies for that. Let's see here. And I'm not sure what happened to where my iPad, the actual camera, Source Spirit. Anyway, let's see. Is this the image you want to bring up first, or is this a different one? No, that's not the one we want to bring up. We'll bring that up eventually. Okay. All right, I mean, this should be the one we want to bring up. Yeah, so this is coming from Ross Dellinger over at The Athletic. And this is according to this organization, by the way, that's called the AFCA, the American Football Coach Association Board, has recommended the following: expand playoff with maximum participation, elimination of conference title games, and the ending of the college football playoff by mid-January. Again, that is according to Ross Dellinger. So what is happening here is that you're basically having, well, actually, before I bring that up, you bring up this little doozy up here from Josh Pate and RG3. Had a little argument yesterday that kind of ties into this. So here's Josh's little Twitter dispute there. We can leave this up here for the remainder of the segment. So with that report from Russ Dillinger about, again, the AFCA, American Football Coaches Association recommendations, again, what they're wanting: expand the college football playoff, maximum participation, elimination of conference title games, and ending CFP by mid-January. What this, again, is entailing to me and to others is that it does seem like that the money printing machine, the ATM of college football, is once again being used by the oligarchs, TV mongols, and whatnot to get this in. And I question whether or not the American Football Association actually believes this stuff, or this is just what they're being told to say. I don't know for sure. Again, this is still developing news, but again, what they want, according to Dillinger's report, is expand the college football playoff, maximum participations. Everyone gets in. I guess you expand it to 24 teams, just evaluating the regular season, elimination of conference title games, which is a also never done decision in my opinion, and then in the CFP by mid-January. So this, in response to this, RG3, to make this whole thing short, made a post about this whole situation, and then Josh Pate had to chime on it, reared his head into all this, his bald head, if you will, reared his head into all of this, and him and RG3 got into a long spat about how they want the show to be ran, essentially, and arguing amongst themselves on Twitter about actually going to their face-to-face. Novel concept, right? Arguing amongst each other, debating amongst each other face-to-face. Instead, you have to do it behind social media. And look, I get caught up into it too. It's just funny how, Josh over here and RG3 literally writing essays on Twitter and, writing full-on, essays and, talking to each other amongst or behind a camera or behind a screen. Fun stuff, right? Definitely very, very constructive of them, both. What I'm trying to say here about this whole Pate situation, him and RG3, in my humble opinion, this is just noise. It's not really that important. I know Pate has been very vocal about being the commissioner of college football. And look, I understand why he says that, because he thinks he's, the man of the people. And look, I do follow this guy, JP. I mean, he even responded to one of my questions on the extra pod that he did a couple months ago, which I thank him for that. And that's cool and whatnot. But his whole mantra and his whole, campaign of being the college football commissioner, it's cool, it's funny and whatnot. And we talked about it too. There's, been rumors about should it be a commissioner in college football. But Peyton and RG3 sort of like philosophical battle here of, this to me sort of, echoes, or not echoes, but sort of speaks out to me who's smarter. Like Josh thinks he's smarter, while RG3 responds saying, "I'm smarter than you, Josh Pate." And then Josh, is, constantly, or at least was doing this for a whole hour yesterday around noon, as you can tell by the timestamps, by this screen catcher here. Like he's like typing out these long essays, almost, like essay-like responses RG3, and then RG3 comes back with another essay-long response, giving his manifesto on college ball, and then Josh brings out another manifesto on college ball, and essentially these guys, by the whole end of their spat, essentially wrote like a full-on textbook about college football, right? You may as well could have done that. You could have had this whole thing published and whatnot. But anyway, so yeah, this little spat with Josh Pate and RG3, it really and truly to me, it's just noise. It's just theater. It's not real. Now, if this was an actual debate, these two were actually arguing these facts on camera, like actually, or even in person, I would have more respect for it. But I don't really have any reaction to this. This is just noise. This is not real. Okay, like these are just guys, again, Josh Pate and RG3, just writing up manifestos on Twitter behind the screen. Like this isn't getting anything done. This is just, these two guys going after each other. Again, I just think this is all noise. Okay, this is not real. At least it's not real constructive ways in fixing college football. Okay, so I wouldn't buy into any of this. This to me just feels like noise. Again, I know for sure that Pate's definitely going to talk about this tonight, among other things we talked about today. It'll be interesting to hear his response to this. But in general, I just don't really take any of these Twitter spats and drama stuff. I just think it's noise. Okay. Now, do I believe Josh Pate believes some of this stuff? Yeah, I think he does. He's been very vocal about it, for sure. But writing these whole manifestos on Twitter and essentially writing a full-on book, like that's not very constructive. That's just like, like to me, this is just wasting talking points that you guys could have done on camera. Again, I don't know the full story. These two could have easily had a conversation on the phone after this. Maybe they did. Maybe Josh will review that tonight between him and Robert. And like these two guys I full amount respect. Again, I respect Josh Pate. I listen to this show every single time he does one. I respect RG3. I think he's a very, very good announcer for college football. I think he's pretty funny. But spats like this on Twitter, these like Luan and Pate will and other people will do this too. And look, I've done this to experiment stuff, and not like this. I don't know how in the world he was able to do this full on. Like Josh yesterday. I mean, damn, dude, you wrote a full on essay. Doing these little essay posts, which is incredible. I don't know how in the world you were able to do that. Must be those premium Twitter premium functions that I've not been able to discover yet, or nor do I want to use either to a full extent, other than just let people know I'm actually a real person, because you never know, AI bots and whatnot on Twitter. But yeah, this whole Pate RG3 thing, for the most part, it's just backdoor noise. I don't care. It's not going to fix anything. It's not going to fix the issue of the oligarchs running college football. It's not going to fix the issue of the sport being the sport in general being destroyed because of college football expansion, the whole ATM, the money thing, the thing that prints a lot of money. Again, we talked about this earlier with the neutral site games issue and the whole international game thing. Again, it's all under the same thing. It's all this ATM, oligarchs wanting more money, TV Mongols wanting more money. Again, the same group of people who I guarantee you have never done a focus group about what college football folks want. And, RG3 and Pate and all these other people posting these manifestos and essays on Twitter, that's not going to help. Like, real action needs to happen here in terms of action that is constructive, right? Being able to do essays or even being able to do, not essays, shows like my show, right? Shows that are out there and actually getting the message out there, which is why I like what Josh does. He actually gets his message out there and says what he needs to say. But it just feels like, to me, doing this on Twitter, well, you could have just saved this for your show. To me, it's kind of a personal thing where it's like, really, like you're basically, writing a full-on like essay pretty much on Twitter where you could just say this for your show. Again, like I've done it before myself, and I've tried to stop myself from doing it in certain times, but most times it's just me posting, responses to people with like the Oregon Duck picture, which is a meme, kind of. Just, I don't know, like I don't know. It's kind of a funny thing I do sometimes and whatnot. But anyway, yeah, this whole thing of Pate and RG3 is just noise. It's not really helping anything. Again, we'll see what Josh says tonight. Again, his words speak more than his messaging on Twitter, in my opinion, in a lot of ways, to a certain extent. Again, most of the time, it doesn't bother me, but stuff like this is kind of like, come on, dude, really? Like, you could have just saved this for your show instead of just arguing back and forth with RG3 and you two doing this whole philosophical battle on Twitter. That's just on a computer screen. But yeah, I think this is all just noise. Like, I don't like everything they're saying here is just goes in through one ear, or I guess you see it, you move on. Only reason why I'm bringing it up is a lot of folks making a big deal about it. Don't make it a big deal. Really. Like, this isn't helping anything. Again, it sounds like I am making a big deal, but like I don't really care. Like, you're writing these essays on Twitter. Like, your actual words on camera would speak more to me, in my opinion. At least if you're willing to fix college football like Josh Pate is, I would much rather see you do that, or at least to actually say that stuff on your show than do it on Twitter, which is why I didn't respond to that on X, didn't care about it. And I don't think you guys should really, pay attention to what that really means and full honesty, other than just calling out for what it is, which is just, again, writing long essays on Twitter that really have no meaning at all. Again, I don't know the full story. Maybe Josh and him had a phone conversation after that, but I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, stuff like that, doesn't really fix the issue in college football. It's still a problem. The oligarchs are still in charge. TV Mongols are still in charge. Folks who are behind the wheel of this sport don't seem to care at all, period. I mean, it's pretty evident that we're seeing, a lot of these games move from home and home to neutral site. Pretty telling. So, and again, this whole thing about the college football expansion, getting everyone to participate, which is, again, basically giving everyone a participation trophy, limiting college football title, conference title games. It's like, that is just kind of dumb because, like, even from the standpoint of these TV mongrels, it's like, so you're taking away something that you created to make money, so you're taking away something that is making money? That doesn't make any sense. Not to mention, too, this is coming from a college football, like an American Football Coaches Association. I find that hard to believe. Yeah, I really think the college football coaches are really advocating for college football expansion and the season ending by mid-January. Yeah, I really think that's what they want. But according to the AFCA, whatever that means, the coaches who attend that are pushing for that. Okay, that's fine. I guess you guys can hitch your wagon to the Mongols and all of the college football oligarchs who run the sport who don't seem to care. But that's just me. Anyway, that's the show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this show. A little bit more of a different tone than usual, but I had to say what I had to say about this. It's pressing times we live in college football. So again, we'll have an extra pod tomorrow. Back to hopefully our normal schedule next week. 2 shows a week, hopefully, schedule permitting. Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the stream, follow us on X, Instagram, Spotify. Be sure to follow over there. Again, as I've been saying, we'll be going on vacation, which has been scheduled for a while, in late May, around Labor Day. So, or not Labor Day, that's on the way in September. Memorial Day week. Not that weekend, the week following that, we'll be on vacation. So, no shows then. So, until next Tuesday, we'll have our extra pod tomorrow. So, until for the main show here on YouTube especially, until next Tuesday, hopefully, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care, and we'll see you guys on the next